Hi, this is part 4 of Roach Reflections, and I want to talk briefly about rods for float fishing for roach. The standard match rod for many years has been 13 foot, and that's the sort of rod that I like. But what sort of rod do we need to catch roach on the float? We need to be able to control our float to cast a reasonable distance, maybe up to 25-30 yards at the most. We need to be able to pick up the line, to strike, to mend the line when trotting, and to set the hook on what might be a fairly small hook. It may be on very light lines. We can use a hook length as low as 0.06, possibly more likely 0.08 or 0.10, and a main line that's rated, even if that's not the true breaking strain, at £2, £2.5, maybe £3, probably not heavier than £4 at the most. Occasionally I use 1.5 Maxima, which probably breaks at over £2 anyway. Over the years I've had many favourite rods, and a few have stood the test of time. My favourite carbon rod that I still use occasionally is a Bruce & Walker John Dean stick float rod with a spliced tip. That dates back to 1981, which is a very long time. Caught an enormous number of big roach on it. It does work, it does the trick. You can strike and hook roach, it plays them well. You can fish any method on it, whether it's a stick float, a waggler, an avon. Probably would fish a bolognese type float, although I don't use those. It feels heavy by modern standards, yet it only weighs 6.5 ounces, which isn't very much. A modern equivalent rod, which I think is still in production, is the TriCast John Allerton Premier Match, which I've got in a 13 foot, which has also got a spliced tip, not the finest of tips. And again, it's a versatile rod, but this time it only weighs just over 5 ounces. And you can fish a stick float, fish an avon float, fish a waggler. It's not the best waggler rod, probably other rods that are a bit better, but it will do the job quite well. Other rods that have been favourites of mine over the years are from Normark and Daiwa. Daiwa have made an enormous number of really top class match rods, and they've often had a good range of match rods, anything from fairly cheap and cheerful £50-60 rods right up to, in today's prices, 500 quid rods. Some of the rods I've got that are quite old are, I've got an original Connoisseur stick float rod, an amorphous Harrier Match stick float rod. Both of those date from either the very late 80s or very early 90s. I think the Connoisseur is probably 1990 and the other one about 92 or 3, I guess. And a Daiwa a Daiwa Team Daiwa X, which is a bit of a funny name. And that's got the tournament reel handle on it. Very fine tip on it, very forgiving, very slim blank, quite light anyway, 6 ounces. Superb rod. I use it for waggler fishing on still waters. It's got a fine tip, so when the roach nod their heads it sort of gives, and I fish fairly fine 0.08 hook links, £2 main line, 3 AAA wagglers. Really super rod for that. It will work on the river, but on the river those other rods I've mentioned are probably better. I mentioned the Normarks. Normark had a tremendous reputation right from the early days of carbon, and by around about 1985 or 86, when they brought out a new range, they had a good reputation for top class match rods. And this new range was designed by Jeff Salisbury. It was the Microlight, which is an ultralight rod for fishing very fine, a Titan, which was an all-round match rod for fishing sort of £2 line and fairly fine lines, and an Avenger, which was the sort of long range, more powerful rod. All three of those are still around if you can find them second hand on eBay. They still command a reasonable price. They're the sort of £70 or £80 rods. All really nice rods to use. use the microlight with the £1.5 main line, the Titan with £2 and probably the Avenger with £2.5 main lines, and they'll all do the job. That series spawned an even better range in the early 90s, the 2000 range, and again a microlight, a Titan and an Avenger. I've never seen the microlight 2000. It is a very fine rod, very light, very forgiving for fine lines. I've got the Titan 2000 and the Avenger 2000. The Titan is a super rod for waggler fishing, for fishing light wagglers. You can fish a stick float on it on the lighter Avens. Very good still water rod. Nice light action. The Avenger is a bit more of a powerful beast. It's actually tippier than the Titan, but you can fish a waggler on it. I fished for tench with it years ago with sort of £2 line and 20 hooks in the winter, getting £6 tench on it. But it's a good rod. I've had big roach on it. Good rod on the river with big floats, but tippy enough to fish a stick float. Of the more modern rods, I'm going to mention a few. Cadence have got a range that was based loosely on the Shakespeare Mach 3s that are now obsolete. I haven't seen those. They're only on a sort of mail order basis, so you won't see them in the tackle shops. They tend to be priced just over £100, so pretty reasonable and seem to be highly regarded. There are some rods by Reeve. These are much more expensive, very light, meant to be very, very good rods. Again, not seen in our tackle shops, but I believe available from pêcheur.com. Maver have made some very good rods over the years, hard to find again. The ubiquitous rod that you'll see just about in every tackle shop, certainly around here in Dorset, are the Drennan rods, Acolytes, Acolyte Pluses and Match Pros. I'm not Drennan's greatest fan when it comes to match rods. I think the action is not quite right for me. They're not crisp enough. Some of the Acolytes had a bit of a reliability problem at one time. Some were snapping when people were just threading line through the rings. Whether that was an early manufacturing fault since cured, I don't know. I think Drennan were very good about it, replacing rods as needed, but it's not something you'd expect to happen that easily. You pays your money and you takes your choice really. There's a selection of rods. If it's well balanced, if you've got a rod that you're losing fish on all the time, maybe get someone else to watch you fishing. Find out if it's your technique, bad hooks, striking too hard, not striking hard enough maybe. It's not always the rod that's at fault. And considering some of the rods that top match anglers used in the 60s and 70s and caught tremendous bags of fish, then there shouldn't be much excuse with the modern rods, which are far more forgiving and easy to use. I'm going to quickly mention reel fittings. If we go back to the 60s and 70s, we had sliding aluminium rings for holding our reel in place. They tend to fall apart, letting the reel fall off the rod. When they're working, they're okay. No modern rods have them anymore. They gave way to John Roberts plastic reel fittings that again slid on to the thing, and there are graphite fittings that Daiwa used around about the late 80s into the 90s. Just about everyone's gone into variations of screw down or screw up fittings. Most use the Fuji screw down fitting, which comes from the butt ring down towards the reel, and they're very good, very secure. Tricast for some reason use a screw up fitting that some people don't like. It's not so comfortable if you use a centre pin reel. I've put something that I clip on over it that makes it a bit more comfortable. With the Fujis, my problem is that it's just too thin a diameter at about 17 or 18 millimeters diameter to hold comfortably. With my Titan 2000, I actually hacked off with a hacksaw the screw down part of the Fuji fitting and glued a piece of fiberglass rod butt around it, and then put sliding metal rings on it, which is not ideal, but it works. After that, I realised that if I took some homebrew corks, quite big corks, I think 1 1/4 or 1 3/8 diameter, bored 18mm holes through them and then glued them on with araldite onto the reel fitting, then shaped it with a rasp and a file, I could have a reel fitting that had a diameter of about 28 or 29mm and really comfortable. And I formed a hood as my design evolved, that the screw down fitting would go underneath that hood, and that works really well. And I've changed, like I say, I changed the design from a hump to a parallel section now, which is what you see here. The next Roach Reflections will be about reels for roach fishing and lines. Hope you've enjoyed this. Please click like and subscribe, and hopefully you'll be around to see the next video. There'll be a lot of videos in this series, as a tremendous amount to cover, and it will take quite a while to get there.